Hello, I'm Ken Wasserman, your host for today's Community Corner. And I'm pleased to chat today with Andy Fair, an immigration lawyer who's a fellow resident of South Orange. We're going to discuss today some of the important and interesting political, social, and economic legal aspects of immigration law. Andy has practiced immigration law for over 30 years. He's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, cum laude in Oriental Studies, having a concentration in China and Chinese. He also graduated from Temple University Law School. He's lectured in immigration options for scientists and for teachers at colleges and universities. And most recently, he's an adjunct professor at the City University of New York Graduate Center, where he teaches a course on immigration law. He's fluent in Mandarin, Cantonese, and Spanish. He offices in New York City. Andy's wife, Ellen Weisbord, is a teacher of art at Columbia High School. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Ken. Pleasure to be here.
Let's start by asking, what do immigration lawyers do?
Well, I would say immigration lawyers do many things, but they mainly are involved with assisting people from foreign countries come to the United States for various reasons, either to immigrate or to come here for temporary reasons, such as temporary employment or visiting of some kind, or to study or lecture. So those are the two big categories.
And what's the role of the INS in that process?
Well, the former INS, which is now called the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, and is part of the Department of Homeland Security, administers the immigration law, especially eligibility for different visa categories. But they also enforce the immigration law. The branch of Department of Homeland Security that's now called ICE, which is Immigration and Citizenship Enforcement.
Where do our immigrants come from primarily?
Well, when you say our immigrants, I'd say that a great deal of people who come here to immigrate are from Mexico and Latin America, but some of the largest groups immigrating now are from India and China. Europe, not so much.
So are there quotas for each individual country?
There is an equal quota for every country. There used to be quotas based on racial makeup of the countries. For instance, China, for many years until 1943, were not allowed to come here as immigrants. They could only come as investors or traders or merchants, they called them. But in 1943, Madam Chiang Kai-shek came to Congress and the quota opened up for China. But since 1965, coinciding with the civil rights legislation, the Kennedy bill allowed equal numbers to come from every country in the world. So it's the issue is how many people want to come from those countries, and if there's heavy usage of the available quotas from different countries, backlogs will result for those countries.
But are there the same quota for every country?
That's correct.
Whether there's a small population or a large population?
That's correct.
So are certain types of immigrants encouraged or discouraged as part of the immigration law?
Absolutely. There's a policy behind the immigration law as to family immigration. Family unification is an underlying policy reason that's reflected in the law. So immediate relatives of immigrants can come here, or brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens, children of permanent residents in of U.S. citizens. So in order to keep families together. On the other hand, we also want to encourage to bring needed skills to this country. So there's employment-based immigration, primarily based on the needs of the labor market, or to bring the best and the brightest, so-called, to this country.
What about people who want to invest in the country?
There's a category for investors. It's called employment creation, but the investor would have to invest $1 million in a business here, or in they call it a targeted area where there might be poverty. You can invest $500,000, but you have to create 10 new jobs within a 2-year period.
Is the great majority of immigrants to the United States family-oriented?
Yes, it is.
And what the next would be labor?
Employment-based, yeah, labor-related. There's also asylum and refugee, which is a third big area. We still are concerned with protecting people who are persecuted in different parts of the world. We find that that's an important reason to allow them to come here.
On a personal level, was there any part of immigration law that caused you to want to become an immigration lawyer?
Well, that's a very good question, Ken.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, I find there's a very strong emotional attachment for me to the field of immigration law. My grandparents were immigrants, and my father didn't speak English till he was about 5, although he was born here, but he was in an immigrant milieu. They were Jewish and spoke Yiddish at home and so on. So growing up, I was privileged to hear many, many stories of how they came over from Europe at great personal sacrifice and danger. And it was always a very romantic topic for me. So when I was in law school, somehow saving somebody a few dollars on their taxes did not attract me so much as, not that I have anything against that, but didn't attract me so much as helping people come here and attain a new status and a new life. That seemed, there's a little bit of the social worker in it. So that's what attracted me. The other thing is, as to myself, having been in the field of Chinese studies, I was very much interested in foreign cultures and language and so on. And many immigration lawyers do speak foreign languages and are interested in other people's cultures.
Is there any particular factor of immigration law today that interests you, that causes you perhaps more pleasure than other factors do?
Well, there really are some areas that give me a great deal of pleasure, and I'm still very excited by the field even after more than 30 years in it, which I'm grateful for, thankfully. But I was before I went into Chinese studies, I was a science major as an undergraduate at Johns Hopkins, and I was actually a failed science major, but I still enjoy science. So now I'm focusing my practice in the last 10 or 15 years primarily on foreign scientists and engineers and technology people who are working at national labs and universities.
So is there any part of your practice that you really enjoy?
Well, it's working with these scientists who are literally the engine of the U.S. economy for the near and middle future, bringing people here who are cancer researchers and helping them establish their lives here, people who are material scientists developing new ways of energy development. I find it very exhilarating.
What about the cultural mix?
the cultural mix is also, I enjoy every single day, trying to understand people, what their background is like, what they're really trying to tell me, what they can't tell me. So I still find that quite interesting.
Have you done a lot of traveling, and has that impacted your interest in immigration law field?
Well, interestingly enough, I have not traveled that much. I feel that the world has come to me more so. So I'm an armchair traveler, as it were. I have been to a few places. Canada, I find very, it's not very far afield, but I've been to China a few times, and having been to travel throughout China on several occasions, it's helped me understand at least what the Chinese people have been going through.
Do you use your Chinese in your practice?
Yes, yes. Many of the Chinese clients would rather speak to me in Chinese. They do speak English, some of them very well, but a lot of them prefer to talk to me in Chinese, and it's mostly in Mandarin. Yeah.
Is the immigration law changing in order to meet the modern challenges, or is it something that's been stagnant for the last couple of decades?
Well, it's always changing. In fact, that's one of the challenges of the field, is keeping up with the laws as they are constantly tweaked in Congress. But in terms of reflecting the challenges in our society, I would say that yeah, they've been. That's been the purpose of Congress, to try to meet the challenges that we're facing.
Okay, we're going to get back to more specific responses to that. We'll take a brief break, and we'll be right back.
Plastic ones last longer.
Pork bellies close steady due to speculation that demand for bacon-related products.
Read me this one, Daddy.
Okay, honey. The less art kids get, the more it shows. Are yours getting enough? Art. Ask for more. AmericansForTheArts.org.
Hi, we're back. I'm Ken Wasserman. I'm talking with Andy Fair about immigration law. One of the changes, recent changes, that made the national news recently, last year, was the 2007 immigration bill, which failed to much publicity. Can you tell us a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses of that particular bill, as you see it?
Well, that bill, it made an attempt to achieve a kind of all-encompassing solution to the problem of illegal immigration. So what we've been talking about is legal immigration, and how Congress passes laws to decide who can come here for various reasons. But the issue of the 11 or 12 million, as it's estimated, people in this country who do not have status, it's becoming a major social problem, especially in certain states like Colorado or California, Southwest, and so on, but here as well. So that bill attempted to deal with some sort of a legalization of these 12 million or so people. And they call immigration the third rail of politics. It's similar to the third rail in the New York subway system. If you touch it, you're electrocuted. So most politicians will treat it like a hot potato and pass it off as best they can and stay away from it and hope they don't get burned by it. So anybody at election time who is in favor of legalizing illegal immigrants under the current climate, it would seem, would not get reelected. So most of Congress shied away from this bill, and it basically died in committee. Now with the new administration coming in, there may be some change. But if you notice, Barack Obama hardly spoke at all about immigration. I think in one of his speeches that I heard, he mentioned that immigrants should be given a chance. And that was it. He didn't want to touch it either.
With respect to the 2007 bill, was there any part of it that had something to do with family reunification? Did it limit it? Did it expand it?
Not that I know of.
Did the American Immigration Law Association, which I guess is the national body, have any positive or negative positions with respect to this bill?
Yes. The AILA, which is the acronym, American Immigration Lawyers Association, which is the largest professional body in the United States, is basically a pro-immigrant body, and we're hoping that Congress would come up with a scheme that would be fair and yet integrate the illegal immigrants into society. The problem is that in 1986, a legalization law passed. It was called the Immigration Reform and Control Act. And that law passed. It was a two-headed beast, so to speak. One side passed a bill called employer sanctions. The other was the legalization. So the anti-immigrant wing got employer sanctions. They were hoping that if employers were fined for hiring illegal immigrants, they would not hire them, and therefore illegal immigration would dry up. On the other hand, amnesty occurred, that's legalization, and millions of immigrants were made legal. That somehow did not sit well, at least with the, you could say, the conservative part of the country, and they were said these people were rewarded for breaking the law. And ever since then, any new legalization proposal was considered rewarding lawbreakers. So that's where we stand right now. We're in a deadlock about how to solve this problem.
So did you have a position with respect to the 2007 bill? Was it good?
Did I have a position?
Yes. Was it good? Was it not good, in your view?
I thought basically it was a good idea. Now, I have not personally figured out in my own mind how illegal immigration could be solved. I think my ultimate conclusion, and what I say to my class when I teach this subject, is it can't be solved permanently. The reason being, unless we develop some kind of a bunker state, which we're not going to have. We're the leading country in the world. We have to have somewhat porous borders and access to our culture, our economy, and our technology. People have to come here. Artists come here. Musicians, entertainers of all kinds. There are scientific conferences. And when people come here, they have to have some sort of facility for coming here. And if we're going to have such tight control of all types of immigration, people won't come here. And they've already stopped coming here because of the difficulties even in getting visitors' visas. But as far as people coming from, say, South America or China and overstaying, it's almost impossible to stop. I think you have to have some sort of a scheme that, yes, try to prevent illegal entry into the United States. But once people come here, if they have certain criteria developed over time, some sort of ties to this country, there's got to be a mechanism to integrate them into society. It's bad for our society to have an underclass, a permanent underclass of 11 million people who have no rights or access to certain things that we consider normal.
So is part of immigration bad, would you say?
Part of immigration? I mean, is there a seamy underside or a negative aspect to it?
Yes.
Yes, I would say that there's, just as in most things in life, there are negative aspects to the field or the environment of immigration.
So how would you characterize those negative, or some of those negative
Well,
aspects?
the negative aspects are, as to legal immigration, there are long queues, that is, long waiting lines for people. Even spouses and children of permanent residents might have to wait 5 to 7 years to be reunited with their family. That's a hollow promise, if you ask me. That's not the way it was meant to be when it was set up. As to people who are here illegally, there's exploitation of these people by employers, by other of my colleagues, immigration lawyers, some of them anyway. But mostly, I would say, by employers, and their children have difficulties. Some of them who are themselves here illegally maybe would finish high school, but then can never go to college because many colleges won't accept people who can't prove that they have status. The other thing is we're headed towards a society where we might be requiring personal identification documents even for U.S. citizens. As it is, the IRCA bill that I mentioned, the Immigration and Reform Control Act of 1986, requires all Americans, not just immigrants, but all Americans to prove who they are when they apply for a job. If you had to apply for a job, which I know you don't because you're self-employed, you would have to present your birth certificate or some document to show who you are. I think that's a very bad change in the direction of our society. Now there's a new law called Real ID. You can't even get on a plane without proving who you are. And Real ID, the states have rebelled against it, but things are headed towards an identity document for U.S. Citizens. And that's all because of illegal immigration and the urge to solve this problem. We're solving this problem, cutting off our nose despite our face to solve this problem.
Is American immigration policy different from many other countries' immigration policies that you're aware of?
Yeah, it is. For the most part, American immigration policy is generous, and many other countries' immigration policy is not generous. You can't very well immigrate to China if you wanted to, not easily. It's very, very difficult to become a naturalized Japanese citizen. Whereas once we accept foreign people to come here as residents, we encourage naturalization.
What about Canada?
Canada is big and cold, so they want as many people as they can.
So it's more liberal than
it's
is the United
definitely
States.
more liberal.
Can citizenship be easily revoked?
Not easily.
How is citizenship revoked?
Well, there are 6 or 7 expatriating acts, one of which is treason, one of which is, I just talked about this, one of which, in my class, one of which is fighting in a foreign army, accepting office in a foreign state, things like that. But under the Supreme Court ruling of Vance versus Terrasses, which was 1980, you had to do one of these acts with the intention of giving up your citizenship. So let's say you committed treason. That's a terrible thing. You might go to jail for it or be shot, but you'll die as a U.S. citizen unless you intended to give up your U.S. citizenship.
My recollection is that Lee Harvey Oswald at one point thought that he had voluntarily revoked his citizenship by sending a letter to the State Department. Is that possible?
That's possible. You can voluntarily renounce your citizenship. But now it's much more difficult to do because you have to sit down and be warned 5 different ways that you know what you're doing, you're not crazy. I mean, maybe he was crazy, but you have to prove that you intentionally, that you had some intention to give up your citizenship.
We've got about a minute left. If you were the immigration czar, how would you change the immigration process as it exists today?
Boy, that's a tough one. I would add more visas to the quota for family immigration so that the queues will come down to be reasonable. I would also give more visas available to be able to cherry pick the brightest minds that we can bring over here better than what we're doing. And I would figure out some method of an ongoing legalization program.
Andy, our time has gone quickly. We could continue this for a long time. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for joining Community Corner.
Thank you, Ken.